friends, this is Christopher Davis-Shannon, and today I'm going to show you how to play the 1928 song, When You're Smiling. You're probably familiar with the great Louis Armstrong's version of this tune. We'll be starting off with a play-along with simple chords and lyrics so you can sing and strum along, and then I'll have a two-part lesson breaking down both sections of this form, as well as the little bit of chord melody introduction. And then we'll talk at the end about some common chord substitutions and different voicings that you could use to play these chords if you want to hip things up a little bit. So don't forget to like and subscribe and do all those things that YouTube tells me that I have to tell you to do. Let's get started. When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing, the sun it comes shining through. But when you're crying, it brings on the rain. Stop your sighing, get your happy again. Keep on smiling, 'cause when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. So this little song is just divided into an A and B section with a little bit of repetition between the two. Let me just play the A section by itself so we can look at what chords are contained in here. It's going to start out a little bit something like this. When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing, the sun comes shining through. We'll stop there for the moment. Let's get the first section first. So we need to know where to start vocally, and we're going to be starting out on an F major chord. And our first vocal note is either your open A string or the second fret of your G string, same note. And then the second note is the C that's on the third fret of your A string, and then finally landing on an F. So we have that little vocal pickup. And then we're going to strum just our regular old F major chord for 8 beats or 2 measures. And then we're going to make this into an F major 7th chord, and we have a lot of different options that we can use for this. But in this context, when I'm coming from an F to an F major 7, I have a very nice option, and really that is because all we're doing is changing one note. To make this a major 7th, all we're doing is taking an F major chord and adding an E to that. And what I like to play here is this voicing right here, which if you look at the notes here, there's, well, no F in this chord. But the thing is, we've already established that this is an F major chord, and this is going to sound like a variation to that F major chord, even though there's no F in there. And this is something we get to do a lot on ukulele, is play voicings that don't have all of the chord tones in them. We only have 4 notes to choose from at any given time. And while you could jump up and play this voicing here, or you could add the pinky to play this F major 7th, this one's much easier and gets the point across that we need in this song. So we're going to strum that F major 7th for 8 beats itself. So we're going F to F major 7th. And then we're coming up to a D 7th chord. We can use our barred one right here, which maintains this C as well as the A as common tones between the previous chord and this chord. And this D 7th's a little out of place in the key of F. It has an F sharp in it, but that's okay because that D 7th here is leading us to our next chord, which is a G minor 7th. We hear that D 7th and then our nice resolution to G minor 7th. So let's just play these first 8 measures of the A section of When You're Smiling. It's just 2 measures per chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Now, we could just stay on this G minor 7th here, but what happens is actually similar to what happened in the beginning. We had that F to the F major 7th. We're just displacing one little chord tone in here. And the same thing kind of happens in the bass in this section. So we'll go to a regular G minor. You can just put down your ring finger to grab that G. And we'll play that for 2 measures, and then come back to our G minor 7th. So we have this little bass line in here. If you're familiar with this song, you probably automatically hear that when you play it, and we want to bake that into the chord voicings that we're using. And after this, we're just going to go to 2 measures of a C 7th chord. I want you to try using this one right here. This one that you generally play is absolutely fine in this context, but for me, this makes it easier to get to our F major voicing. It maintains this common tone on the C. Just sounds a little bit smoother than. So you can try either way and see what you like best. After this C 7th, we're just going to resolve right to our F major chord, and then we're headed on to the B section. So let's try this A section together. Here's your starting vocal note. And so I'll give you 4 beats and then 2 extra because we have 2 vocal pickup notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. When you're smiling, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing, when you're laughing, the sun comes shining through. Now let's look at that B section. So for the B section of this tune, if you've been following my lessons for a while, the first 8 measures probably look mighty familiar. This is our honeysuckle rose bridge that I had mentioned in that lesson is so important because it's such a common chord progression and a common trope used in bridges throughout this time period. And we see it right here. We're using our F7, our 1-7 chord to 4 chord to dominant 2 to dominant 5 chord. But let's listen to the B section of this because after that it changes and kind of comes back to our main theme. When you're crying, well, it brings on the rain, so stop your sighing. Get you happy again when you're smiling. Oh, when you're smiling, the whole world, it smiles with you. So we're starting out on this little honeysuckle rose bridge. We start out with an F7th for 8 beats, and that brings us directly to a B flat 6th. For another 8 beats. Then all we're doing is putting our ring finger down, make that a G7th, and that leads our ear right to our C7th. And we'll use the same exact voicing that we played in the A section of the tune. So let's try these first 8 measures together. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this C7th is going to lead us right where we want it to, back to our F major chord. And you'll see that melodically, we're back to the beginning of the tune, but we're just going to truncate the A form a little bit to give an ending to this song. So we're going to play F for 8 beats, but instead of going to that F major 7th, we're going to go right to the D7th chord here to get us back home. So we're going to play D7th for 8 beats, and then G minor 7th, C7th, and then resolve to F. So here's our last 8 measures of the tune, which is really just a play on the A section. So let's try this entire bridge section together, and then we can piece together the whole tune. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can strum through the whole tune. You can go right back to the beginning of the video and play this with the chord voicings. But let's look at that little chord melody introduction to get us into the tune now. So for our little chord melody intro, we're just gonna cop the last 4 bars of the tune. All you need to do is put down your G minor 7th chord. And we're gonna start on beat 3, the measure before this, giving us a little pickup note. We're gonna pluck the D that's on the 2nd fret of the C string, already down in the chord. And then we're gonna strum through. So the B flat's our melody on the 1st fret of the A string. And you can note that on beats 1 and 3, to accent the melody, I'm strumming all the way through and accenting those notes, and then a very light strum on 2 and 4, just to keep the rhythm moving forward without really hammering it home too much. And then we're coming down to a C 7th chord, but the melody note here is an A. So we're actually just gonna play a C 6th, all open, and do the same exact thing, accent 1 and 3, and then pull back on 2 and 4. And then we'll finally just pluck an F and do a little turnaround here, just a standard one. We'll go F, F sharp diminished 7th, G minor 7th, and then C. So let's listen to this chord melody very slowly, and then we'll try it together. It'll go like this. Let's try that much together. So I'm going to give you 4 beats and then an extra 2 for that little pickup note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Now let's take a couple minutes to look at some alternative chord voicings that we could use throughout this song. For this song, when I'm playing it, I actually don't mess around with it a whole lot. I really love playing out of F position. On uke, I think this F major 7th voicing works really well, but there are a few changes in here that I do like to make, and just some extensions to a few of the chords. So the first few I keep the same. Da 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 dee da da dee 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 dee. Now, since the voice here is just sustaining, we have this tied note across the bar, I usually want to make the uke do something so it doesn't just fall flat and we don't lose momentum. And a very easy device to do here is just use a little chromaticism. We're just moving a chord a half step. So we can go G minor 7th and then down to A 7th. Let's listen to how this goes in context. I'm going to start on the D 7th chord. So it'll be the whole world smiles with you. Just a little movement in the chord can make a heck of a lot of difference. We don't need to really overthink these things. And then I'd really just stay usually on the G minor 7th. Sometimes I go to a G minor here. I don't think it really matters. You can play around with this and see what you like. But when we do get to the C 7th at the end of the A section, I hate open C 7th chords. I truly, truly do. So I like to use this C 7th chord right here. And that also enables us to throw in the sharp 5 very easily right before we resolve to the F. So you have 2 measures. Just to add a little bit more tension until we get to this little F chord right here. Now when we get to the B section is where the fun really starts with these chords. While we could play this F 7th down here, I really like to come up to the 5th fret and change the tonality of the instrument. Give this higher voicing, which you can note is really just your C 7th chord slid on up. And from there, we're going to go to our B flat 6th again, but we have one accessible right here. And we're going to nod back to that chromatic movement that we used in the A section. It's always great to bring back little themes that you present, even if it's just a slight movement of the chords. Listeners love familiarity. So we have B flat 6th here. To go to an A 7th, we can just slide this down 1 fret and just resolve right back to our B flat 6th. Now this B flat 6th voicing is also a G minor 7th. We're going to a G 7th next, which means we only have to change one note and we can maintain all of the rest of the common tones in this chord. So ring finger just needs to come up to the 7th fret, giving us a G 7th. That's our B right there. And then we come down to this C 7th. I like to maintain that D, making this a C 9th chord just for a moment. And watch what I do here. I like to play around with what the melody is. So I go C 9, C 7th, just our regular one barred across, move it down a half step, move it back up, and and then make it a sharp 5. Let me play these last 4 measures of the B section here so you can hear what that little movement sounds like. So it complements what's happening in the moving melody line over top of it. And that's something that we always want to keep in mind is, are we complementing the melody? Are we creating counterpoint against the melody or a counter melody? You know, these are fun things that we can do with chords. We don't just have to play open position chords. And then when we come back to this little bit at the end, we can come down to this F, or if you want, you could even do an F6 straight across the 5th fret, which I like to do. And then you have a D7th by adding just your middle finger to get there. And then our G minor 7th we said is already right here. C9, C7, F6. Let me play those last 8 measures here with that. So let's try this whole form with a little bit of these fun chords thrown in. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope you all have enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you next week.